Welcome to the Exit Engine Podcast, Episode 15.
Good morning, John.
Joe, how are you today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited about today's episode.
I'm very excited about today's episode.
We have a very special guest today.
Yes, we do.
And we're going to, before we get to who our guest is, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today and why it's important. So we're going to talk about life, preparing for life after the exit, right?
A critical part of selling your business.
Such a huge piece, and again, often overlooked, right? So one of the issues that we come across all the time is that people are just not prepared. They want to sell their business. When people want to go, they want to go, right?
Exactly.
The problem is that they're not always prepared, and there are some pretty significant issues that will arise, especially when you're going to get a giant sum of money in one shot.
And they think that's the end, right? They think that getting the money, getting the check is the end. It's really the beginning of the end, right?
That's it. It's just the beginning. That's a great way of putting it. And so today what we wanted to do was talk a little bit about how to prepare yourself for that eventual end. What's going to happen? Where's the money going to go? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to protect yourself? Stuff like that, right? Makes sense?
Exactly.
So we'll talk a little bit today about, there's some key steps, some key things you should take. We're going to talk about the things that you got to do like right before, things you got to do like right after. And we'll talk about some ways to preserve the wealth, protect yourself, and then even talk a little bit about what you can do with some of that money that might be charitable or legacy oriented or something like that. Make sense?
Yes, that's great.
That's awesome. So I want to bring in our guest today is a good friend of ours, Phil Heness. Phil is a wealth manager. Hey, Phil.
Hey guys, how are you? Thanks for
having me. How are you?
Me.
No problem. Thanks so much for coming on, and really excited to talk to you today. So I guess the first thing we want to talk about is that from your perspective, just give us an overview of kind of what you see and what is expected in terms of for someone who is basically going to come into a net ton of money in one shot, right? There's obviously some challenges with that. It's as fun as it is and as great as we all want to have that huge hit, there's some real serious concerns, right?
Absolutely. I would say, first and foremost, the priority is going to be getting a plan together, identifying the path that individual plans to take in the long term, identifying those goals, and then figuring out how to work towards them. One of the biggest things we see in the market is a lack of opportunity. And so a business owner may come into a large sum of money, and then all of a sudden, they're not sure what to do with it, and it sits. Right. And it sits where it's not working for you. Right. So we want that money to work for those business owners, those individuals, and to continue to grow. And so there's some opportunity risk when you don't have a full-fledged plan when you come into those type of funds.
And are there timing concerns and things like that? So, for instance, there might be a situation where I'm in an earnout. Okay, so if I sell my company and I'm looking, I might be making, large sums of money over the next 3 years, kind of an earn-out thing. Is that a different situation? Are there different approaches to something like that as compared to like when I get like one big lump sum?
Yeah, there's definitely different approaches. And one of the strategies that we employ at Edward Jones is that, we work in lockstep with full advisory teams, right? So we work with business owners, we work with their attorneys, their tax consultants, their accountants, whatever the case may be, because at the end of the day, when we are putting these plans together, everyone needs to communicate to ensure optimal execution and suitability.
So what do you think are like some of the key steps that need to be taken like before exiting? And how long out, and what's generally the what you recommend in terms of people being able to examine this stuff and take action?
Yeah, so I would say, there's some things, for example, legacy planning, right? So you want to, identify your plan for those funds or the business when you are earlier in the stages of exit planning, 3 to 5 years prior to when you want to exit. really identifying, the legacy planning, tax management, tax efficiencies. What are your short and long-term goals? And then working with those professionals to understand, well, what is the growth potential, or what is the risks of all of these different strategies. And then first and foremost, there's also an opportunity of protecting the business, right? And so there's protection strategies that can be employed as well prior to exit.
Mhm.
And Phil, can you give us an example of one of those protection strategies that you mentioned?
Yeah, so there's a couple. One is a buy-sell agreement that is completed through life insurance plans. And basically, for example, let's say there's two business owners in a corporation, so LLC, whatever the case may be. They may take out life insurance policies on each other should the unforeseen happen. I know you guys talk about the D's, right?
Yes.
5 Ds.
The 5 Ds. And so, based on those, what happens is both business owners pay a premium, monthly, annually, whatever the case may be. And, God forbid the unforeseen happens, then the life insurance policy can pay the business owner who is still part of the business and covers the value to the estate. So that the business can continue, right? So there's your buy-sell agreement. There are some other, and typically that's for 3 or less business owners in an organization. And then there's other buy-sell agreements that are for larger ownerships, where there could be 4 or more owners, and those are called entity agreements. And then, basically it's similar to the end is the same. But for example, the business is actually paying the premiums versus the business owners. And then one other one is like a key person insurance policy.
Okay. Thank you for that.
That's interesting. I think one of the things that we come across all the time, Phil, is that people are just, they leave things too late, right? We talked to that. You just brought up the 5 Ds. Obviously, we know that 80% of the time, that's one of those ways, is the way that people exit. The importance of being able to plan from a legacy standpoint is very much overlooked. So as much as we're concerned about, hey, what happens to this giant lump sum you get in a financial harvest situation, the real lesson here, is to be able to prepare yourself for the unintended exits, right? How do you protect the business when there are, when there might be, when the business owner dies, for example?
Yeah, I mean, listen, recent statistics, right? 80 to 90% of business owners, or 80 to 90% of a business owner's net worth is their business, right? And so if that doesn't show you the importance of pre-planning your exit, I don't know what does, but making sure that, you have a full, clear picture of what is going to happen down the road, where it becomes your choice versus an involuntary option. And we understand, business owners, they have a ton of time invested, right? And they may not, everything sometimes when it's not a priority gets pushed to the side. And a lot of times it's these types of things, right? It's the wealth management side. It's, paperwork. It's, things that just aren't the day-to-day business that you feel, I can get to it next month. Well, the real basis and crux of all of this is, initiating it earlier so that it's in place and you don't feel up against time.
And you can always change it, right, Phil? I mean, I can imagine that many of your clients come in with an idea about what they're going to do. They have a plan in place, and then they think about it and they review it and they say, oh, I want to change it. And it's much easier to change a plan than then at the last minute than to create one, or need to create one at the last minute because something happens, right?
Yeah, this is a work in progress. And I tell prospects, I tell clients, Edward Jones has a well-established 5-step process that really identifies when we start working with business owners, for example, it's, where are you today? We have 5 questions. Where are you today? Where do you want to be? Can I get you there? How can we get you there? And can I keep you on track? Right. So this 5-step process is never one and done. It is an ongoing process where we utilize those questions to help identify your goals. And when you identify those goals, you're able to quantify your goals, and then you're also able to address the financial needs post-exit, right? And so a lot of times these meetings allow a business owner to, get better understanding on what expectations do they need coming out of the sale, right? Do I have, and valuation aside, it's what do I need? What do I want after my exit? And then that helps bridge the gap to identifying a sale price, for example.
Yeah. And I bet the plan, obviously the post-sale plan that entrepreneurs have, if they want to roll it into another business or they want to retire, the strategies you're going to employ are quite different in those scenarios.
Exactly. And we provide customized approaches that are personalized, right? So we look at every individual separately, discuss their path, right? What are they on track to meet whatever goals they had previously? Have their goals changed? Well, let's identify the new track and ensure, again, tax efficiency for some of these business owners, looking at long-term bequests, looking at charitable opportunities, depending on what their, what their interests are.
Sure.
What are the there must be a lot of mistakes that people make along the way, right? Do you know that some of the can you call out some of the things that you see that people kind of the big mistakes that people make along the way when they're in this situation?
Yeah, for me, I think, the more I sit down with business owners, individuals, it's that they don't ever feel like there's a path forward. They think they've made, they've waited too long to do X, or, they don't think they have enough to do Y. And, really it's establishing that personalized approach to financial planning, that it doesn't matter where you are in the stage of your life, or, what your past is. It's about moving forward and really identifying that plan and just working towards a goal. And looking at, a lot of people, they may think, oh, I have goals and I have this, but when you really start talking about it, you identify the difference between a short-term goal, a long-term goal, what your needs, wants, and wishes are. You're really able to then establish a path forward. And, at times, even with myself, it's, you think you have a plan and you realize, actually, this was just like an end result, but we didn't really talk about how we got there or how we're going to get there. And it's really just an evolving process that is continually being updated based on life changes, investment time horizons, risk comfort, and all of these types of things really make that plan come to fruition. And, for a business owner coming into a lump sum, for example, better to have that plan, beforehand, so that you're not feeling rushed, or being able to work with your advisors to put you in a position when that money or those funds come in, to put them in where they need to be.
Right.
And Phil, are there any things that an entrepreneur, founder, co-founder should avoid right before selling their business, right? Like, is there anything that they should absolutely not do, or should minimize the possibility of doing?
Well, I think that would probably, work more towards like the accounting side, right? Working very closely with their accountant to make sure that their books are clean, and that they fully represent, the business. From my perspective, as a wealth manager, it would be, minimize debt, right? Don't take on a ton of liability. Don't overstretch yourself, and don't plan for future success, right? We can't, as a financial advisor, I can't guarantee the success of the money that you're bringing into Edward Jones, for example. But so you, as a business owner, don't assume you're going to, earn X, percent on this money unless you actually have a plan for that money and have it positioned to work for you.
Got it.
Right. How much does diversification kind of play a role in this? I mean, obviously, with anything financial, when you're investing in stuff, obviously everybody always says that diversification is key, especially if you've got a long way to go until, in your life, so to speak. Diversification's got to play a huge role in whatever your wealth management plan is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Diversification is key, and that goes for not only just the investments that you put in, but also the type of accounts you have, right? Or the placement of those funds. When we work with business owners, we know that some are seasonal, right? And they have high points and low points, and we want to make sure that they have about 6 months of an emergency fund established, right? And so making sure that you have cash on hand as needed, and that's just more diversifying, your funds from a money I might need now to money that I don't need at all and can sit and grow for the next 5, 10,
However
15,
long.
20 years. And so, a diversified portfolio from that perspective, ensuring that you have money set aside for your immediate needs, then your short-term needs, 3 to 5 years, and then your long-term, which is longer than that. And then from there, you're building portfolios that, are you have a portfolio objective tied to those investments, right? And so looking at what we call what you would stocks and bonds, right, or equities and fixed income, not necessarily trying to time the market. It's more about time in the market. Edward Jones and our financial advisors, we are more on the long-term strategy. Really good investments, and not trying to time the ebbs and flows of the market. The market, election time, right? Everyone, hears of the markets are going to go crazy. Listen, the markets are going to go up, the markets are going to go down.
Right.
And we communicate that to business owners, individuals. We try to help facilitate the long-term strategy.
And I think the idea is that what people have to be concerned about is that you are, even if you get a lump sum or you have an earn out and you got a great deal of cash and stuff like that, you better be prepared in other areas of your life, right? In terms of what you're going to do and how this money is going to be spent, the other things that you want to do with your life, right? Because you're as you just said, what you don't want to do and what you can't plan for is a giant uptick in the market, right? To be able to give you the additional cash or whatever that you want to do, that you need to be able to live. It seems to me that there's a kind of a great amount of like financial discipline that's needed, right? Lauren Michaels, I think, said, and I am a living example of this, that you always lose the first money you get. And
I like that.
I think there's a truth in that, and I think that that again, being prepared is obviously the key, right? And knowing that you're going to get this money and having a plan for this money is so necessary, because what you don't want to do is have money sitting around, whatever, or be whim oriented or whatever you're going to do, right? In terms of that. So how do you work with people to kind of help them with this, kind of maintain this discipline?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times the maintaining the discipline is really an emotional check, right? And so, a lot of times when you're not working with a financial advisor and you're watching the news and you're seeing what the markets are doing, and you see a potential opportunity, you're not 100% sure. Do I sell out of this? I feel like it's going down, but should I stay in and wait for it to turn it around? Or a lot of times emotion is the downside of investors.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we as a financial advisor do is help support those individuals and business owners, right? We are the stability in that relationship to help communicate effectively that hey, we see some turbulence in the market, but we positioned you with a well-diversified portfolio that is takes into account these changes in the market in a given period, and stay the course. We have a long-term strategy, and for every person, their personalized portfolio, their personalized investments have the risk comfort levels that they are comfortable with, that they have, raised their hand and said, this is what I'm comfortable with from a risk perspective. And we stay the course with that.
Right.
And regarding like we see it sometimes when we're working with companies and owners on valuations, and a business owner pays themselves a large amount per year, which is completely legal. And let's say they're paying themselves $450,000 a year or $500,000 a year. And after the sale, they no longer have that income. Have you seen that be we talk about the sustainable income, but a sustainable income for an entrepreneur when they've been making $400,000 a year, that might be a difficult discussion when, they could probably live on less. And does that change for entrepreneurs? Do you see that change causing a problem after they sell their business?
It could, right? It could. And, one of the things that we do when we work with the business owners is, for example, if we know that the exit is coming, right? We plan ahead for that. We reassess spending needs, right? We assess, well in advance, does the business owner need to start saving more? Do they need to save more personally outside of the business, right? And then, just reassess the full picture as we get closer to that date where that income then is not available. And then we look at, obviously investment vehicles that could help provide that type of an income or flow of assets to ensure that the business owner post exit can continue the lifestyle that he or she has.
So it also, I think what we see a lot is that when you are deciding, again, your timing of things, the value of the company, the money that you can get, obviously that's all kind of mixed up in how you're going to be able to, in terms of the wealth that you receive and the ability, your ability to be able to make investment later on, and the amount you'll have to obviously play with and things like that. So, the question is how much do you spend, working with other advisors and things like that in terms of the planning of this stuff? And I bring this up because obviously one of the things that's critical for us to provide as advisors is the ability to show people how they can actually increase the value of their business over time, right? So depending on how much time you have, you might be able to say, look, if you've got 9 months, well, you're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, but not ABC. If you've got more time, then ABC become options and things like that. So how involved are you in that kind of in the aspect of the planning of stuff with other advisors?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. And that was sort of what I had touched on earlier about the pre-planning process being about 3 to 5 years out, right? That would be, your prototypical timing. But hey, we know sometimes it could be a shorter period, but at the end of the day, it's, what we do is we work with those advisors or that advisor team in helping to close the gap from the lifestyle the business owner has or wants to have after the business exit to, looking at the valuation of the business at that current period and assessing the needs and how we can adjust or, make changes to ensure that the business owner is comfortable with the exit plan and the valuation.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about, again, back to kind of legacy planning and like what to do. And from a legacy standpoint, let's talk about kind of what legacy is and what it really means, especially in the financial area, because I think it might mean different things to different people. What one of the things that we see is confusing for people a lot is, or not confusing, but maybe they don't really think about is, what happens to the business if I should die, be disabled, otherwise be incapacitated and unable to actually work in the business. The family of the owner. So you talked a little bit earlier about how you can, kind of insure yourself with the partners and things like that to be able to protect the rest of the partners from that stuff. But talk a little bit about the importance of the legacy and the family or piece of this. What are some of the common things that you see in terms of people planning in terms of their families and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's always a tough, sometimes it can be very difficult talking about legacy planning, intergenerational wealth transfer. But, for those business owners who have put their blood, sweat, and tears in their business, over however many years, the commitment that they gave, it is our responsibility as advisors to ensure that they have proper planning. Um,
Right.
Identifying what the business owner wants in a succession plan or legacy plan. Um, you know, we work with attorneys on the development of trusts.
Right.
That could be an avenue that they want to go down. And also, it's bringing, when appropriate, bringing the family, for example, into the conversation.
Mhm.
Legacy planning is a group effort. And, again, sometimes it can be difficult conversations. Other times it could be, the family's already entrenched in the business and it's just a matter of, identifying the next step. And so for me, talking with business owners about legacy planning, it's a group effort. We want to bring in, spouses. We want to bring in children that are likely going to be the beneficiaries or the, next, man or woman up to lead this business. And we want to ensure a smooth transition.
And obviously, one of the things that we see a lot too is that, especially with families, is that there ends up being, especially if there is a sudden death or something like that, when people aren't prepared, this, it's a fighting over who gets what heir gets the corner office. Everything from that to to obviously, fights over if your will is not updated as well or something like that. Boy, it could be a real mess, right?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that, business owners and individuals, included, is just, trying to limit court time, right? Not having, that the type of, the documentation, the legal documents, the signatures, having them updated regularly. These things can, make for an uncomfortable situation like a untimely disability or passing, make it even worse, right? And so it's a little bit of effort to ensure that these plans are completed, followed through, everyone is transparent and has clear visibility into legacy or transfer, and not waiting until being more proactive than
Right.
reactive.
What about charitable giving? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's tax implications to that. There's there's sheltering of tax stuff from that. And again, you're not a tax planner, so we're not going to get into the tax situation today.
Sure.
But from your perspective, what are the strategies and stuff that people can kind of employ when they want to do that, and what are the things that kind of benefit them?
Yeah, I mean, working with tax advisors and accountants, when you have a client who is passionate about an organization or community support, or feels very strongly about the environment or anything, and they are coming into a chunk of money, or know that there's an opportunity for them to do good with some of their holdings, there's an opportunity for charitable planning where they are able to provide this this funding, at the same time also limiting tax liability potentially. So there are some really opportunistic areas or strategies where not only can you help yourself from a tax efficiency standpoint, but you can also help something that's near and dear to your heart.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. That's cool. Good, John.
Yeah, I was going to sort of based sort of on the charity and not that so much the tax aspect, but the implications of coming into a lot of money and sort of doing something, not impulsively, but doing something right after the sale. Like, has that come up, Phil, in your when you've been dealing with owners and entrepreneurs?
Buying a boat.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how do you either plan for that or you plan for it, obviously, but if it's not in the plan, that must be a difficult discussion when you're talking to an entrepreneur about buying a boat or doing something crazy with the money that seems sort of irrational to you.
Yeah, and hey, we all like those shiny gifts or those shiny toys, and we have to be flexible. A business owner, may come to us or an individual and says, "Hey, to your example, Joe, I want to buy a boat." Oh, okay. Well, we were not really set up for you to buy a boat. And so here's where we are. If these funds come out, this is your current standing. This is how on track you are to meet your short, long-term goals. Are you comfortable with this? If not, we can make some adjustments, or maybe wait a few months, save a little extra. And so it's that ongoing conversation, because we have clients calling us all the time. Hey, I need this, or hey, I just saved a little extra money, I'd like to put it into this investment. So that ongoing conversation allows full transparency between the advisor, the advisory team, the client, on if they want that boat, that's great. This is what this is the cause and effect of it.
Here's what you tell them next time they tell you you're going to buy a boat. It's only going to be the second happiest day when you buy the boat, because the happiest day is when you sell it. That's what you tell them.
That's exactly right. It's not an investment.
I just tell them, find a friend with a boat.
Even better.
Cheaper. Much cheaper. Yep, exactly right. It's a boat is a good investment potentially in your happiness, except that then it turns out actually not to even to be that.
The fuel,
but, to your guys,
the costs of, oh my God.
Yeah, but to your point, sometimes someone's car breaks down and all of a sudden they need a new car, and it wasn't really in the initial plan, and you look at, well, what are our opportunities? Where are we? And you just sometimes you're on track, and that's great, but sometimes that track has to take a right turn or a left, and just continually being available for your client, having those conversations, sometimes difficult, sometimes easy, just always being there from an advisory standpoint, similar to what you guys do, just always being there to support their needs.
It's not something you think about. I don't think. I mean, in terms of, look, we all have, investment stuff, but a lot of times what we're doing personally is investing in products. We've got 401k. You're not really ever talking to anybody. You know what I mean? It's not like you're in an ongoing way where I pick up the phone and go, "Hey, Phil, thinking about this today." And you're like, "Yeah, Joe, you should do X, Y, and Z," or whatever. Like, most of us don't have those kinds of relationships with financial people. So the fact is, though, that this is the kind of thing that you would, the services that guys like you provide, and obviously you in particular, Phil, because I know how tied up with your customers and in their lives you are, to a great effect, by the way. Talk a little bit about the importance of that in the relationship, and what people should be asking of their wealth advisors, especially if their wealth advisors aren't Phil Heness.
First and foremost, hey, business owners, right? Are you planning for your retirement? It is not just do I have enough to pay myself a salary? It's, when you're a business owner, you don't have, an employer funded 401k unless you create one, right? And so, having the support to help provide those opportunities, or those strategies, from a sole proprietorship to an LLC to a corporation. Well, what makes the most sense for you? Well, it could be an owner 401k, or it could be a simplified employee pension plan. It could be a simple IRA. There's it could be an employer developed 401k, right? So there's so many different strategies that these business owners can take to help utilize and leverage the tax deferred opportunities for retirement planning, right? And a lot of times business owners don't think about that. Obviously, we work closely with accountants and their CPAs, and they may bring those conversations up, but sometimes they don't. And it's the responsibility, if you see an opportunity and we bring it up to a client, it allows for then transparency, where we all then become, create this cycle of efficiency, and we start identifying, we're working together on a regular basis to identify opportunities over a long period of time. And sometimes it could be retirement plans. Other times it could be, charitable giving, but the benefit of having a team around a business owner is that it's not just one person's ideas. It's a group of ideas that come together and work seamlessly.
Yeah, and given that there's that tax person, there's the financial advisor, like there's the legal person, that some of those things can be in conflict, right? I'd imagine some of the times where in achieving the goal that the entrepreneur wants to get to, there can be some sort of, you all are working in harmony, but there can be some tax versus legal issues that probably come up in some of these discussions.
Absolutely, right. And so if there isn't if there isn't that level of exploration from the subject matter experts, a ball could be dropped and that could become a long-term challenge, right? And so, with every opportunity does come risk, and it's just making sure that everyone is doing their part to provide their expertise.
Yeah. And just one question that, dawned on me during this call, 80 to 90, you said 80 to 90% of owners' net worth is obviously often tied up in businesses. We've seen the same thing. And it's interesting. We've seen owners that have already planned for retirement, right? Have 401ks, haven't retirement investments, as well as the exact opposite situation is they look to this sale to fund their retirement sort of in its entirety.
Yeah. And, there was another stat that I looked at today while preparing for this call, and it's, 50% of business owners have to leave their business involuntary, right? For whatever reason. And it's those, death, disability, and what, I don't know.
Disagreement.
I finally got them: death, disability, disagreement, divorce, and distress. Right.
And so that is a huge thing, in that, if half of those business owners are not properly planned for that significant life event, what's next?
Well, because it gets worse, because the reality is that so only about 20% of businesses that pass on to another owner, especially after the original owner dies, actually make it past 2 years. So it's not just about the financial well-being of the individual, but and then their family. But the reality is that the chances that the business survives are actually really low once the owner dies. So the original owner, rather. So the ability to plan for this stuff ahead of time. And look, I'm one of those people that just, I stand on this stuff all the time. And John knows this. I'm like, it's one thing, we're all expecting a huge financial harvest. And isn't it great when we sell the company and we can do that? And maybe, hopefully I've been doing, you can't expect that you're going to, only make, only be able to pay yourself, whatever, $100,000 a year or whatever, and then suddenly one day your company is going to be worth $50 million, right? That just doesn't really work. The math on that isn't right. But at the same time, there is this notion that we're trying to get people to plan for the best case scenario as well as the worst, because at the end of the day, right, it's the chances that you actually survive to the end. And I don't mean survive necessarily just like by living, but I mean survive that the company itself survives for whatever reason past then, is actually, they're not great odds when you think about it, considering how many small businesses get started every year, and the 34 million some odd businesses that are out there right now. I think it's scary that the fact that the reality is just like life in general. And again, it's not like it's just being in a car accident or just, or if it's just dying, it'd be one thing. The odds of that are relatively low. It's the other four, right? It's absolutely it's the distress. That's the most common one, is actually the distress, and then the disagreement with other people or, with other partners, right?
Yeah. We always say, plan for the expected, prepare for the unexpected.
Right, exactly. Because the reality is that most people are not losing their businesses because they're not getting great deals or not making enough money on a sale. It's because they are, losing the business to the other one of the other 5Ds. And that's the thing that exit planning, I think, John and I are always saying that this is why this is so important. Again, there's so many ways to skin the cat of selling a business or exiting a business rather, right? You've got you've got heirs, you've got the ability, you've got partners, you've got management staff. There's all kinds of ways. There's charitable stuff. There's potentially trusts. There's all kinds of things that you can do with the business that aren't just selling it outright for a financial harvest. The problem is that what people, even if you're looking at that, you're probably not looking at what might happen to you along the way, and preparing yourself for those things, I think, is actually one of the biggest advantages of exit planning that there is.
Yeah, I think preparation is key. And, you guys could probably speak to this a little more, but it's what are your, you have about 3 options, right? It's an internal exit plan, it's an external exit plan, or it's a liquidation, right? And each one of those buckets is pretty much going to give you a different valuation, right? So
right.
The benefit is planning for all 3 options, with the hope that you maximize those valuations, and you're put in a place to have a financial plan after that exit.
What do you think, Phil? We work with a lot of different business owners at a lot of different levels, okay, in terms of the amount of money they make, their total revenue. We work for people that are making, $750,000, at EBITDA, up to, 30 million in EBITDA. All right. I mean, the reality is that it's a very big range. From a financial standpoint, what is your, we talk about wealth management, and I think that might be a little bit of a misnomer. I mean, what you're really doing is financial planning. You guys may have a threshold in terms of, an account, value, or a financial value to get involved with, just because. Why? Because in order to have a certain amount of money to really make a dent in something moving forward or in a time frame. What are your thresholds around the amount of money that I have to invest in things like that?
Yeah, it all depends, I think, on the financial advisor and their ability to service clients, right? So when you first come out, you're eager, you're ready to sign everyone and anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as you start building your book of business, you just don't have the time to really be able to service every single person that comes through your door, calls, sends an email. So you may at times be a little selective, as you become more experienced as an advisor, as you build your assets under care or management. We typically try not to have minimums, but every advisor is different. Our accounts don't necessarily have any minimums. In fact, we have opportunities for all different levels of investment, right? And we also have some opportunities for those that have a significant amount of investment, our high net worth, our ultra high net worth, where it's, really a white glove service, right? And, again, we have those opportunities to, build customized portfolios for each of our prospects and clients that is specific to their needs. So be it 750,000, 20 million, 100,000, 50,000, there are, the strategies, may be tweaked a bit, but the structure at times can be very similar.
And the sooner, and again, another reason to start soon, right? The reality is that whatever money that you can be putting away and talking with someone like Phil or any kind of, financial planner. And again, the financial planner thing you have to be careful with, because again, I sell insurance, and so therefore I'm a financial planner. That's the kind of stuff that you have to be careful of. But not that's necessarily bad, but just understand that lots of people call themselves financial planners who are actually just selling products. But the idea is that if you can start off early and start to invest even money that you're paying yourself, invest bonus money you're giving yourself or things like that, you can start to build that portfolio way, way, way before you're getting ready to sell, right?
Yeah, I mean, much of the wealth that we see accumulating with clients is because of the amount of time in the market. Allowing that, allowing for growth for income to compound year over year, that's where you start seeing the significant growth. When someone first starts, an IRA, and it's, they're starting from scratch, it might take them a little time to start seeing significant change. But then, after 10 years or 15 years of in the market, you're starting to realize, wow, look at these big chunks, every year that I'm seeing in a year, in a
Compound interest.
annual
Yes.
growth and the compounding interest. And again, it's one of the main, bullets of wealth management and investing is time in the market.
Yeah. How often are you working, Phil, with entrepreneurs, and they come to you with sort of not unique investment opportunities, but sort of ones that are not the vanilla stocks and bonds that I can imagine make up most of your portfolios? What's your guidance about those types of either like private partnerships or specific investments in small companies or anything like that? What is your guidance typically when an entrepreneur has a ton of money and they've made a ton of money with those types of sort of more unique investment opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, this day and age, there's a ton of alternative investing options, right? From crypto to
Right,
private equity to who knows what, right? And so it's really just a matter of, if someone like a client comes to me talking of these types of alternative investments, we may not at Edward Jones have the ability to put those funds in those types of investments. But if a client, is looking for a recommendation, and they have the ability to invest in those funds, and we don't necessarily say we think it's a good idea or a bad idea. We just communicate the fact that you have a diversified portfolio here. Should you want to take an opportunity at this type of investment, it might have a higher risk profile. You may be locked in, and not be able to maybe pull that money out, or, we really just give very high level, recommendations on where they are here at Edward Jones. But,
Sure.
We don't necessarily look to providing recommendations on crypto or, anything that we don't necessarily hold ourselves.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. When it comes down to the spouses, like you said, children of the, of an owner or whatever, alive or dead or whatever, you were talking earlier about getting them involved, in the process and stuff like that. How does that look? I mean, I think part of the thing I remember, the businesses that I've had and things like that, it's again, my kids were much younger for most of it, so it wasn't really an issue. But I'm starting to get to a point now where my kids are starting to be adults. And, and one of my, my son is an economics major, and I'm thinking about, how do I bring him into the business? And if he wants to do that, and the whole thing, he may not want to do that, which is fine. But those questions, how do the questions around other family members in the business and stuff like that, how does that kind of affect the planning piece?
Yeah, I mean, I know from my own perspective, when I work with clients, our meeting frequency tends to be a little more than other financial advisors.
Mm-hmm.
I like to meet, 2 to 4 times a year at a minimum. And so, that's outside of general phone calls or, email interaction. But in those meetings, we assess the life changes, we assess, those opportunities. That's the time to have those conversations of, hey, it'd be great, if, your spouse, wants to come in and talk to us about anything, ask any questions. Do you, the client, would you like to bring anyone in to provide them transparency, or to see if, if they're interested in utilizing these services, or, getting more insight into the business finances or where the holdings are, just, bringing that into the conversation on a regular basis when we're meeting with clients in our annual reviews or, performance updates, just always bringing it up to a client to keep it top of mind.
What about, I would imagine that bringing these people into so I think that there's some resistance potentially out there, and I think it's potentially a male situation, kind of male modeling thing or whatever, to kind of protect everybody from the dirty financial end of things, right? The problem with that obviously is that if something is to happen to you, now nobody knows what's going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, we hope our clients are not in those instances, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's nothing like having these situations and then all of a sudden it becomes worse because of lack of transparency, not being in the know. And so I think it's imperative to ensure that your family is has a good understanding of the business, the modeling, where things are, even from a legacy standpoint. Like you said, it's really just making sure that everyone is on the same page.
And it potentially actually helps the business actually in a way. So, the other thing to consider about that stuff is that if you're not telling your if you're not updating your family or next of kin or whatever on what's happening here, it's actually hard to have people even be involved in the business if they are not themselves transparent in terms of what your plans are. So if my son wants to take over the business and I haven't kept him abreast of everything that's going on what my plans are or what I want or any of the other stuff, well, gosh, it might as well not even be in the business, right? And the reality is that it's difficult enough to be the second generation of a company with the pressure that's on that, because especially if you've built something that's remarkable, because again, the odds of the next generation taking it off and continuing success are relatively low, right? How often do you see again the importance of the family and stuff and being involved in that, but more importantly, can it potentially help the business to be able to have that transparency happen?
I think it can, actually, because when you look at if your family is involved in the business and they become one of the paths to exit planning, and you get that internal not takeover, but where your family takes over the business and you're doing it internally, well, there's a good chance that you've just saved however many jobs at that company versus an external purchase, right? Because you never know what that new owner is going to do. And so, aside from the fact of, being able to, provide insight and information to the family, if they're involved in the business and they have the opportunity to take it over for whatever unforeseen circumstance, think about the entire company, not just, the business owners, but everyone then maybe in a better position with that. And, we talk a lot from the financial advisor standpoint of the greatest amount of wealth transfer coming, and
the silver tsunami, right? Yeah.
And that also applies to businesses.
Right.
So now is the time to plan for those transitions.
That's right.
And so what about tips for entrepreneurs that have just what are some good things? Are there any tips to keep people disciplined, with that new wealth that they're acquiring?
Yeah, and I've seen this a good bit, and it's really just making sure that you stay the course from a expense standpoint, spending standpoint, knowing that how much is coming in, how much is going out, and that you're properly allocated. Again, working very closely with a tax accountant can help, because a lot of times that money is coming in, and you need a professional to ensure that payroll is being managed and the proper taxes are being paid out. And so making sure that although you're seeing this influx of money coming out making sure that it's being distributed where it needs to be distributed for, and again, always saving for a rainy day, having that emergency fund, and then also looking at opportunities to, if you are a business that has employees, how do you keep turnover rate low, right? Well, maybe that's providing a retirement plan for your employees, and looking at all of those opportunities and strategies to continue building your business.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me, as we kind of sum up here, Phil, that basically the most important thing obviously is starting early, right? So the longer you are, your money is in the market, in whatever market it's in, chances are the better it's going to do. And right. And with compound interest and stuff like that, obviously it's going to make a huge difference over time. Right. So the biggest takeaway probably is start early. Yeah.
I think so. And, and to your guys' point, it's work together. It's, build your, every business owner needs to build their center of influence. They need to build their advisory team. And then the advisory team then is working for you in that they're bringing the opportunities to the table while you have the time to continue dedicating to your business. The advisory team works on finding all those opportunities, working through, headwinds, tailwinds, and ensuring, that the success of the business is on everyone.
Mm-hmm. And looking again at look at all the avenues, right? So the other thing is being able to, again, is to keep your options open as you move forward in time, but to be able to explore all the different things that you can potentially do, whether it's with the business itself or with your own financial windfall at the end. Yeah.
Absolutely. I imagine, me, I think I know a great deal, but there's a ton I don't know. Right. And I don't know what I don't know. And so I need to bring people into my world that can help advise me on those things.
And people who can give you ideas and the whole thing. And of course, there's the overwhelming, but keeping that core team of advisors is key because they know you. They get to know you. They get to know what your goals and what your ambitions are. They also get to know, frankly, what your weaknesses are. And I think one of the best things that a team of advisors around you can provide you is that, that kind of gut check moment when you're like, I want to buy the boat. They're like,
yeah. And also options, Joe, right? Like you mentioned earlier, it's like you may proceed down a path, and we've seen this with some of our clients is they have a goal in mind that maybe I don't know where it came from, but once you meet with tax people, once you meet with attorneys, once you meet with people like Phil, they open your eyes to a whole different options of sales, right? ESOPs and all sorts of things we're not going to get into here, but there are so many options for business owners when they decide to sell, from having a son or daughter take over to obviously a traditional sale and all those other options that these advisors can open their eyes to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the reality is we spend a lot of time, because of it's the money part, we all spend a lot of time talking about that perfect, exit when you're selling the company outright and getting a giant, and getting millions of dollars in your pocket, which is really great. By the way, not mutually exclusive. So it's not like, that's the only way. And it's not like if you can't do these other things, if you do that, often what we find, it's actually for everybody, it's in a unique combination, but it is a combination of being able to look at some of the things that I want to do. And if you're lucky enough to have made enough money or been able to have a company that generates enough money, you're in a situation where you can give money away. You can potentially set up a trust. You can set up potentially some kind of ongoing charitable organization. To something that matters to you. So, the ability here, I think the big lesson is that what we're trying to do is, again, like any planning, exit planning in general, wealth planning in general, the earlier you start, the better off you're going to be. When you're starting a business, if you're an entrepreneur out there and you're starting a business today, know that one of the things that you want to do is start thinking about right away, what is your exit strategy going to be? And along with that becomes, how am I going to manage the wealth and the money that I make as I go? It may be too early to have a conversation with Phil about where you're going to put that money, but it's never going to be too early to have a conversation about the potential and about and getting the learning, so that as you come across these milestones, as you grow up, as your company grows, you are now better prepared to be able to actually reach out and say, okay, Phil, now that I've spoken to you a year ago about what all these things are and the whole thing, and by the way, Phil is very gracious about doing that in case anybody wants to know. If you're not ready, Phil will talk to you about the things you need to do to prepare. The fact is, the matter is that that's a key thing, right? Start there, understand what your options are early, and then as you go, you should be looking at it every year. did I have a good year this year? Have I been able to bonus myself some money? What am I going to do with that bonus money and the whole thing? Am I going to buy the boat, or am I going to put it away, for the rainy day, right? Or whatever thing in between. Both, right? Why not both? Exactly right. We love it. We love boating in the rain. In any case, Phil, really, really helpful stuff, man. Thank you so much for being here, and really appreciate you coming on. Phil Heness, again, is with Edward Jones, and you can find Phil. Shout out where we can get in contact with you.
Yeah. First, John, Joe, thank you for having me on here. Anyone wants to, have any information, there's a website. It's edwardjones.com /Phil Heness. PHILIP-HENESS. So edwardjones.com /Philip-Heness can take you right there. Also on LinkedIn, on Facebook. You just search Edward Jones and my name. Shouldn't be a problem to find. And awesome. My office is here in Wynwood, and anyone can reach out through, Google for the phone number or anything like that.
Awesome. Phil, thanks so much, man. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. And we will talk to you very soon. John, hey, takeaways from today?
Yeah, I mean, the takeaways are prepare, right? What I heard Phil consistently say throughout our episode today is prepare. Get in touch with your advisors. Make sure that you have all your bases covered from a tax, wealth, finance, and legal standpoint, and realize that whatever your goals are, whatever you want to do, there are professionals and experts like Phil that can help you get there, whether it's buying a boat, which I don't recommend, or investing, for the future, that you realize that with 80% of your wealth tied up in this business, if you're typical and you're an average entrepreneur, you need to prepare for life after the sale, and your financial means need to come from somewhere, and it's probably going to come from the sale of the business. So you need to speak with professionals to make sure your life doesn't change drastically from an income standpoint after you sell the business you built up.
That's right. So your advisory team, however that is, should at a minimum probably be made up of an exit advisor like Exio or Exit Engine, a wealth manager like Phil, a tax attorney or tax accountant that's specifically on taxes, as well as your CPA. And remember, your CPA and your tax accountant are not always the same thing. So that's something to be very wary of.
And obviously an attorney, right? You didn't mention that specifically, but an attorney is obviously key. And again, I think what Phil mentioned earlier is he can work with any of these people. If you have an attorney that's very close to you, a CPA that's very close to you, Phil's not going to come in and say, "Oh, you have to work with our attorneys." They are, they will work with you. You are the center of attention as the entrepreneur in this whole situation. So remember that. We didn't mention that, but it's obviously key, and it's an important aspect of you call the shots, and Phil can arrange whatever your goals happen to be.
That's right. I think that again, we'll leave it here today, but I think that again, guys, I can't stress enough the importance of being able to think about this stuff early on. All right. There's so many people that get to this stage that, and Phil was being very generous, but I know Phil and I've heard some of the stories, and the reality is that there are so many times when it's too late. And too late to make a big difference. Look, you can always invest money, right? It's never too late to make the investment, but the realization of the investment and the ability to have that money work for you, we all know this, right? Taking advantage of compound interest is everything, and being able to start that as early as possible matters. But at the same time, I think what I loved about what Phil said too was that, guys, it's not just about the money; it's also potentially about the family, about how you can protect yourself, protect the business, protect the rest of your employees. And all that stuff happens kind of within the exit planning and wealth management process, kind of all together. So, the big takeaway is here, get yourself some advisors, okay? If you're a business owner who's even contemplating an exit at any time in the next 3 to 5 years, you should be out there contacting these people right now and making sure that you have this team, available to you at any given time. Yeah. Awesome. All right, John, thanks so much today. Thanks to Phil Heness, wherever you are. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys.
Good. He's still there. Excellent. Anyway, we really appreciate it. Remember, this is the Exit Engine podcast. I'm Joe Stapleton. That was John Caniff. Our guest today was Phil Heness from Edward Jones. You can reach him at edwardjones.com/Phil Heness. Philip-Heness. And then at the same time, you can reach us at info@myexitengine.com. Ask us a question. Please share this podcast with a business owner you love. And also, if there's any comments or any questions you have, that we're always available. We have an episode coming up that's going to be a pretty significant kind of mail answering episode as well, because we're getting a lot of questions and stuff through our social media channels. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram at Exit Engine or Exit Engine, Exit Engine Community. One of those two will get you just about anywhere. Thanks so much for listening. Again, this is the Exit Engine podcast. I'm Joe. That was John. Guys, have a great day.
Thanks, Joe.